You can...
Hi, Tom and Bev. How are you? Hi to Dao.
Hi, everyone.
Hung.
Hello, hello, hello.
Can you hear us? We're
Yes,
messing-
I can. You can hear you.
Okay. We hooked
some
up a
technical problems.
we hooked up a headset and then it wouldn't let go of the computer, right?
Do you find it sometimes tricky when you're both using the same microphone?
Not usually. Not usually.
Not if she listens to me.
We had to separate because of interference when we were the same computer. And
Mm-hmm.
Alberto. Night shift, Alberto.
Just drop my earbuds.
Oh,
Alberto needs a special microphone to amplify his already soft voice.
Right. I guess, yeah, I'll have to sort it out eventually. Not sure when.
Meanwhile, just shout when you speak.
I've been looking at Nina's book, Abhidhamma and Daily Life, for what I look at it over and over. And, you know, I have a bee in my bonnet about latent tendencies. And Ajahn has explained that latent tendencies, she's made the analogy as a stain on a coffee cup, even though she just fall away completely, you know, a stain is left. And my question is, are latent tendencies always a kusala? Are they always a kusala?
When we're referring to the anusya, which is usually translated as latent tendencies, it's just referring to the akusala tendencies. There's another phrase which is asya anusya, and then it includes kusala and akusala, but the anusyas, which are often being referred to, are 7 akusala chaitasikas, and from which all the other akusala tendencies stem from. So I think you'll find in the book that it's referring to the akusala tendencies, but actually all tendencies, kusala and akusala, are carried from citta to citta as latent tendencies, but then the phrase is asya anusya.
Okay, I guess I got the impression that the latent tendencies were, the kusala latent tendencies were ones that were stressed more than kusala latent tendencies. Probably that's the wrong phrase.
Yes, because it's the akusala latent tendencies that have to be eradicated stage by stage, beginning at the Sotapanna with wrong view and doubt, for example. So it's the latent tendencies that are eradicated, not the kusala latent tendencies. But they are there too. The panya is carried from citta to citta, ready to condition the arising of panya when it's time.
I guess we wouldn't want to eradicate the kusala latent tendencies. Okay, thank you.
Sawadika, Ajahn, are you there now?
สวัสดีค่ะทุกคนค่ะ
สวัสดีครับท่านอาจารย์สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับอาจารย์
Let's carry on.
We were just talking about latent tendencies and how all tendencies, kusala and akusala, are latent, carried by one citta to another, but usually when there is emphasis on the latent tendencies, it's to the anusya, the akusala tendencies.
Yes, that's right. Is there latent tendency right now?
Each moment with each chitta, all tendencies, kusala or akusala. Otherwise, there couldn't be the conditioning of different
Even
kusala and akusala. So at every moment, even at moments of seeing, hearing, every moment, they're there until the latent akusala tendencies are eradicated stage by stage. But in the meantime, they are there at every moment in life.
so no doubt about Nibbana. Otherwise, people hope to experience that. But what about now? No understanding of whatever is now appearing. And what is the meaning of Nibbana? No more akusala, which has been eradicated stage by stage. So it's just the understanding of that which is now appearing, leading to the eradication of ignorance at level of arising with wrong understanding and vichikicha as latent tendency. So when there's the understanding of the truth that even right now, there is latent tendency in each citta, which hasn't been eradicated yet, but still, as soon as there is something appearing through any doorway, when there's no understanding, no kusala, it must be akusala, unknown akusala, after the moment of seeing, hearing, and so on, by the nature of paccaya, which has been accumulated quite a long time ago. So now the understanding only can gradually wear away that which appears now as someone or something permanent, because the arising and falling away of any reality hasn't been experienced yet. Even it's now changing from one object to another object naturally, but they seem like nothing arises and falls away at all. So it's only the eradication or the development of that understanding, gradually letting go wrong understanding, little by little, of that which is now appearing. Because nothing is there. They are gone, moment to moment.
Yes, I think sometimes there's some confusion, as Bev mentioned, because the word latent, well, all tendencies, when there is not the arising of kusala or akusala, are latent. But often in the text or in translation, when we read about latent tendencies, it's just referring to the anusyas. So we have to know from the context whether it's referring to just the anusyas, the akusala tendencies, or to all tendencies, kusala and akusya, kusala, asya, anusya. So usually the akusala tendencies are referred to because these are the ones that have to be eradicated stage by stage. And I can just see that Lena is here. Good to see you again, Lena. Glad you've come back to hear and discuss more. Did you have any further comments or questions or points you didn't agree with from Saturday?
I think I'll listen first because there's quite a bit I'm confused about. So I would let others ask questions because there's quite a bit on my plate. I'll maybe listen first and just see what others have to say. Thank you.
I think the main point, or one of the main points that you found difficult from the discussion, was about effort, virya, because we're so used to the idea of I making an effort and making an effort to be aware, or making an effort to understand, or an effort to get out of samsara. And the idea of I is so deeply rooted that we forget that actually each citta arises with virya. Almost every citta arises with virya. It arises, it falls away, kusala and akusala cittas. So now we were just talking about the anusya, the latent tendencies. That tendency to wrong view is there at each moment, but when it's time, it conditions the idea of the arising of the idea of I can make an effort, I can do something, but actually, in truth, there's no I that can do anything. It's just akusala virya arising with moments of lobha, dosa, and moha, and kusala virya that arises with moments of understanding. So it's very hard when
So
there's
I
the idea
understood.
that I can do something, go of that idea.
I think, Lena, you're not the only one who is confused. I mean, as Ajahn often says, the Dhamma is subtle and deep, and quite honestly, there are several times, many a time, I really don't understand. But Ajahn always says, listen carefully and consider, and that's what I take to heart. If there's no I, but still, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I understand that. I think the issue here is that maybe because I've been kind of working with Theravada tradition for the last 15 years, I think it's hard for me to understand the conflict between the two, because I think the Theravada and Abhidhamma, the Abhidhamma teachings were given by Buddha in Tutsita heaven, as it said, but both teachings are coming from Lord Buddha, so there shouldn't be really any conflict between the two teachings. So I'm just trying to find the connect between the two teachings. Like, is there any difference between the two teachings? So what I've been studying for last 15, 20 years, even they say it's non-self, but there is emphasis on virya in the sense of paticca sampada, in the sense that there is this role of, I don't know how to refer to this as I, like in the conventional sense, this is I. So in the ultimate sense, there is no self, I understand. There is anatta of everything. So that's true. But conventional sense, when we talk to each other, we do use the word I, me, and mine. There's no other way to address myself otherwise. So I'm just trying to see, they say that what's the role of paticca sampada or dependent origination in Abhidhamma? Like, I was so far told that things are happening, and avidya is there, ignorance is there, and that's why things keep on happening, and we are not able to penetrate because we lack wisdom. And things are happening by themselves, they're all conditioned, I agree. So lots of causes and conditions are coming together, and that has resulted in a particular thing happening right now. So I agree. But we do have some control over it, in the sense that we can actually, when the feelings arise, there's the pleasant feeling arises or unpleasant feeling arises, whenever whatever is happening, whenever our senses register whatever is happening, feelings arise. It could be pleasant or unpleasant, and then the reaction occurs, the aversion occurs, or clicking occurs. So I always thought that we can actually, the action lies there, we can actually do something about it, because once the feeling arises, we can actually break the cycle there. We can choose not to cling, we can choose not to have aversion, we can actually be equanimous there. We can try to be equanimous there and actually break the cycle, and so we do not actually continue these rounds of birth and death in samsara. Otherwise, what happens? Otherwise, then what is the use? I mean, if there is nothing that we can do, if everything is a conditioned reality, which it is, but if we don't have even minor control over what we are going to do, uh, to break the cycle, then why is Lord Buddha teaching us all the teachings? Because everything is conditioned, everything is just happening. All we have to do is just listen to Dhamma, and when the conditions are right, we'll be able to get out of it. So, from what I understood from yesterday's Saturday's discussion was that all I can do is just listen to Dhamma teachings, and when the conditions are right, things will happen spontaneously. So, like, if this were so, why did Lord Buddha say that do it? Do it. So not like, what needs to be done then? Why is there any role of meditation? Is there any role of sitting down and going into jhanas? Where does that go? What is the role of all of that? Because that requires sitting, that requires for me to sit down and meditate, watch my breath. Is there no role of all of that? So I'm a bit confused from that point of view, Sarah. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Lena. It's very helpful that you give all your comments. And I'm sorry, my connection is a bit unstable, so it lost it before. So on the first point about the Theravada tradition, you mentioned you've been studying in the Theravada tradition. It's different from what we're saying. The Theravada tradition refers to the words of the elders, the words of the enlightened ones. So what we read, no matter in the suttas or the Vinaya or the Abhidhamma, is the Theravada, is the words of the Theras, but it depends on the understanding. So the Buddha taught, as we discussed repeatedly on Saturday, that all dhammas are anatta. So no matter which aspect or which part of the teachings we're studying, we have to remember that all dhammas are anatta. So if we're talking about paticca samuppada, we have to remember all dhammas are anatta. So avijja now, ignorance now. No one chooses to have ignorance, but there is ignorance. There's not understanding most of the time. And no one can stop ignorance arising. No one can stop ignorance conditioning akusala states now, because it's conditioned. When there is feeling, when there is pleasant feeling now, can anyone stop clinging to what is pleasant? If there are pleasant sounds, who can stop clinging to those pleasant sounds? Because the clinging is conditioned too. It's also anatta. When there is pleasant feeling, there's bound to be clinging again and again because of ignorance. So it's not I who can do this or I who can do that. That is not the Theravada teaching.
Sarah, I would like to interrupt you there. Very sorry for that, because that's the point, that's the sticky point for me. I thought there is something that we can do. Right now, I'm in pain and there's a lot of aversion. So the Buddha's teachings about the second arrow, the second arrow. So the pain is there, is unpleasant, but I can do something with the second arrow. I can avoid all the suffering associated with why me, why I'm having this much amount of pain. So I'm being equanimous with the pain, and that's why I'm sitting here. Otherwise, I would be crying out in pain. So that thing, I have practiced for last 15 years to come to this stage, that I've been, the pain has been always there. If I had developed strong aversion to it, if I'd always been kind of, oh, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it, I can't bear it, I can't live with it, I wouldn't be alive here. So it's just that through my teaching that, okay, pain is there, so what? Is non-conditioned, is arising, and you can use this as a vehicle for awakening. So, okay, Lena, we'll see this pain and we'll just be aware of it without reacting to it. So I'm seeing this pain and just treating it as a part of my body, as part of everything else which is happening, without reacting to it. So I thought the reaction is within my power. I can, the pleasant feeling, obviously I like it, but I can choose not to cling to it. So, okay, I want to have a cup of tea. I would like to have a cup of tea, but I can choose not to cling to it, in the sense that if I don't have a cup of tea, I'm going to die. No, I can choose not to cling to it. I can choose not to develop that strong reaction and break the cycle. So where does Paticca Samuppada fits in Abhidhamma? Like that's what I've been trained in last 15 years. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's the sticky point for me. So.
Can I say one thing? Can I say just one thing? You said you can choose not to cling to the tea, I believe, to the flavor of the tea. But I think what you were saying is that you can choose not to have it, not to have the tea, but to cling, not to cling. That's something that depends on your accumulation. I don't know if you can actually choose. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. I think that's a good point, Roti. And I was going to say to Lena that the idea of choosing not to cling is not something the Buddha mentioned. Now, you referred to the second arrow. He did teach about the second arrow, but he didn't say there's something we can do about it. That is an interpretation of his teaching, not actually what he said. So the second arrow is it's real. It arises by conditions. And unless the conditions are right, then it will continue to arise. And let's take, for example, Paticca Samuppada and breaking the cycle. Is that something the Buddha taught? I don't think so. Because in context of Paticca Samuppada, he is describing the way things are. And if there is ignorance arising, then the rest follows as he described it. It's only when the reverse happens that when there is no ignorance, then certain other things follow. And that was his teaching on Paticca Samuppada, not that it's possible to break the cycle. So there's all these other ways of interpreting the Buddha's teaching that one finds out there. And that is the why there are so many different ideas about what the practice is. But if we just keep with the Buddha's teaching and consider carefully the meaning, the deep meaning of what he taught, then a different picture begins to emerge. So that is what we are discussing here. Not what can I do, not there must be something I can do. Otherwise, that nothing happens if I don't do something. But just consider carefully what he said about the nature of realities and what are the factors that need to be present for there to be the development of understanding. And those factors he described, I'm sure you're familiar with them, of association with the wise person, hearing the true Dhamma, reflecting on what has been heard, and fourthly, development in accordance with the path. Nothing about going somewhere, doing something, making effort, so on and so forth. That's precisely what he did teach, that only by hearing the teaching and reflecting on the deep meaning of that teaching will there be conditions for the development of understanding.
Thanks for that, John. Just going back to your last point, you said reflecting on the teachings and you said walking the path. Did you say that, the fourth point?
I said development in accordance with the path, yes, the teaching.
Yeah.
Yep.
So reflections and development. So what does that entail? Like, does it involve, what does that entail?
That's the actual arising of understanding, as I understand it. That fourth factor, practice in accordance with the teaching. It means when panya arises, conditioned by the other. See, each of those four factors is conditioned by the preceding one or ones. So hearing, in order to hear the true Dhamma, there has to be association with someone who understands the Dhamma better than we do. And that's what the meaning of the wise person is. And in order for there to be useful reflection on the Buddha's teaching, one has to have heard it explained in a way that is meaningful for us, that is appropriate for our level of understanding, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the second and third factors. So that leads naturally to the arising. If those three factors are present, then there can be the arising of awareness and understanding, and that would be the fourth of the four factors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we understand that. It's not a question of thinking that there can be the doing of a particular practice which will, for example, stopping attachment arising. The Buddha never even hinted that one can stop attachment arising. Because if it's been developed, if there is the liking of a particular flavor, when that flavor is tasted, there will be liking arising with it by conditions. And to think that one can deny that is to get into an area that just leads in the wrong direction, because one thinks there's a measure of control, which I think, as you said, according to your understanding of the Buddha's teaching, there has to be some degree of control, right? He said that. And I feel that we should ask ourselves, if that's our understanding of the teaching, have we correctly understood what he said? Because he also emphasized, as Sarah mentioned, that all dhammas are anatta.
I guess thanks for that, John. Thanks everyone for putting up with me and explaining to me. As I said, I'm strongly conditioned by all those teachings, so I'm just trying to understand and improve my understanding. So please bear with me. So I guess I've actually heard a lot of Theravada monks. Some of them, I was told they're enlightened Ajahn Sumedho, Ajahn Anand, telling us that Lord Buddha, taught us all these teachings so that we can do something about it. If we cannot do anything about it, if everything is going to be conditioned, and even listening to Dhamma is going to be conditioned, so this is purely my karmas on conditions which has resulted in me coming into contact with this group and me listening to the teachings. If I had not, and there are millions of people who are not fortunate enough to, come in contact with the teachings. So there's nothing that they can do to come in contact with wise people, to have wise friends, Kalyan Mittas, to come in contact with the teachings, one. Secondly, then is there any role of meditation? What about the Anapanasati Sutta, the 16 steps which the Buddha said, So, that was the key, one of the Anapanasati Sutta and the Satipatthana, those are the key steps, from what I understand, to kind of progress on the path. So
what steps do you see mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta?
Satipatthana Sutta, just the 4 domains. So
are they steps?
Steps in the sense that, like you are observing, like even while I'm talking to you, rather than being totally mindless, I'm heedful, I'm mindful of my body, I'm mindful of the voice coming, I'm just being mindful of the kaya, I'm being mindful of the vedana, whatever feeling is arising, I'm mindful of whatever dhamma is arising, I'm mindful. So, the total presence, awareness with understanding from moment to moment of kaya, vedana, dhamma, chitta.
Is there anything in the Satipatthana Sutta that you think is like an instruction that we are being told to do something?
I was told in Satipatthana and Anapanasati Sutta, Buddha is actually telling you, especially in Anapanasati Sutta, Buddha is actually telling you to train. So you actually have to train yourself. It's mentioned, I'll forward it later on.
No, I'm familiar in general, but you see, if we look at the actual words, first of all, it's not in the second person. He's not speaking to someone, you should do this, etc. He's talking about how the person who is has highly developed understanding trains himself. So we have to understand what is it meant by thus he trains himself, thus he does this, thus he does that.
Yeah.
It should not be taken as an instruction to us to try and emulate that person of highly developed understanding who is capable of attaining the jhanas and enlightenment. So we shouldn't just take a single passage from the whole teachings and say, well, this is clearly an instruction to us. We need every part of the teachings that is read has to be considered in the context of the rest of the teachings. Now, it's very easy for anyone to pull out some part of the Buddha's words to support a proposition about doing this or that, or making effort, or following a practice, or attaining jhana. But we need to consider them overall, and whether, because each part of those teachings has to be consistent with the rest. So we don't see the need to try to follow what's in a particular sutta, having regard to who is being addressed there, what is the occasion, and what is the level of understanding being described. Because the Buddha was teaching to all kinds of people, mostly those who had the good fortune to be born at a time when there was a Buddha alive. Therefore, they were ready to attain enlightenment. That was their kusala kamma from the past. So naturally, he's teaching to people who are capable of attaining enlightenment based on with jhana as object. That doesn't describe people who are alive in this day and age. For example. And I'll just pause there because I'm sure Ajahn will want to come in here and say something.
Just for Lena, something you said to me when I was new in this group. Lena, something John said to me many years ago, that the Buddha's teachings is descriptive in nature as against prescriptive. It's something we read not as things to do, but as descriptions of the way things are. So when he's talking to people with highly developed understanding, he's just talking about what's there. And when he talks about making efforts and all, he's talking about conditions that are needed, but it's not to be read as something to do, but just the way things are. So we hear about effort, right effort, or interest. They're just descriptions of dhammas that are needed, but not as, they're not telling us that we need to have, we need to make an effort, make effort arise, or need to make interest arise, or when, as John was saying about hearing the Dhamma, it's not like he's telling us to come and listen. He's just saying that one of the conditions for understanding to develop is to first have heard the Dhamma, and not just hear once, but continue hearing and hearing more and more, so that the understanding can develop.
Ajahn is there. Yeah.
Chen Ajahn Kap, ไม่ได้ยินเสียงอาจารย์ครับ
Yes, I'm thinking about the beginning of understanding to know who's the Buddha and why did he teach? What did he teach about? That's right, we just learned about the word Buddha and teacher and many people, but what about the truth of that the Buddha had enlightened? Otherwise, he couldn't say anything about the absolute truth of what is there as Dhamma, Abhidhamma, so very subtle. That's why we shouldn't forget. It's for a long, long time to understand the Buddha's word about the truth, which is at any moment so true, but unknown as it is at all. That's why we listen to the word of the Buddha and understanding that each word just about what is there in life, not experience as it is. That's why it takes quite a long, long time to understand each word of the Buddha and have clear and firm confidence of the understanding of the truth, not just one's own or the other's thought, but it's the word which is so very subtle. So if what he teaches subtle, we need to think again and again how subtle it is when we use the word subtle, how subtle it is. And can it be known right now? Otherwise, it's useless to read the word and think about it, but no understanding of what is there at this very moment at all. That's why we begin to understand what is the meaning of Dhamma. Why didn't say I and he and who at all, or table and things, but Dhamma. What is it? Reality, the absolute reality. So what does it mean? The absolute reality. It cannot be changed at all. But no one knows about that, no understanding about seeing right now. Is it Adhamma? Is it useful or useless? Not understanding it from birth, because there must be seeing and all other realities from birth to death, unknown as before, or begin to listen to the truth of it. Why it's so very, very deep and subtle that each one is not known before at all. Only after hearing and considering about what is the truth of that to be known stage by stage, which means from hearing just one word and consider the truth in order to understand the subtlety of each reality. For example, seeing. See, everyone sees. What about the understanding of it? And what did Buddha say about it? Is it a Dhamma? Can it be known at the moment when it's there? Otherwise, it's just only thinking about it. So we talk about the idea of thinking of each one about what is there now. But that is not that listening to the teaching of the Buddha to understand a little more about that. And the truth cannot be changed at all. For example, right now, there is being who can change it. It's something different from this moment of seeing when it's there. And there is hearing. It's true at the moment when it's there and it's gone. So can it be taken for I? We think that I was born. I hear, I think all the time. But actually, there are different realities. That's why Buddha taught about Abhidhamma. It's real and it is conditioned to arise. No one knows what conditions seem to arise. But Buddha taught about many, many paccaya conditions for the arising of just a reality like seeing and so on. So it can be known little by little to understand what is meant. No one and no thing. Nobody can change because we're taught about all realities, even viriya. What is it? We think about it, but its nature, which is different from other realities, cannot be known by our own thinking, our own idea. But the truth is that it's just a reality different from seeing. It's not seeing. So now we come to talk about the truth in order to have more confidence that no one at all. Otherwise, there is the idea that I can do and I can try. What did Buddha say about what is taken for I? seeing, hearing, smelling, thinking, and so on. Without those reality, what can be I? Nothing at all, because Buddha taught about everything to be known as it is until it can be directly experienced. The development of understanding itself, not I develop it, but understanding develops at this moment of considering the words of the truth about it, to understand it at any time, not just I try so I can understand it, because just listen carefully to the truth, to be truthful, satya, parami, without being truthful to the truth, it's impossible to understand what is there, because I am listening, I'm thinking, I'll try to understand. But no one at all. Is that the teachings of the Buddha? No one and no thing. Only different absolute realities. Dhamma is conditioned, so it arises. Without conditions, nothing can arise at all. Listen carefully and understanding the teachings that it is now, at this moment, about seeing, thinking, considering the different ideas by conditions. Each has one's own thought about everything, but there can be the moment of thinking carefully of the word of the enlightened one and what is meant by enlightened one. And he taught the way to understand the truth right now, when time comes by conditions, to understand the arising and falling away of what he taught about it. The subtlety of what is there now is that it arises and it falls away. Who knows? Is there any way to try to know without developing, without understanding a little more, until the idea of self is less and less to be known by right understanding itself? The reality cannot understand the truth of this very moment. So before hearing about the truth of seeing or any reality right now, is there any ignorance, not understanding? So when we learn about Abhidhamma, which means all dhammas are Abhidhamma, not just only this word is Abhidhamma and the other word of the teaching is not Abhidhamma, because he didn't teach only just the word, but he taught the truth of what is there by using different words to make it known as what is meant about each different word. Like for example, citta and cetasika. Is now, it's only thinking about it, not beginning to develop the understanding of seeing any time when there are conditions for thinking and understanding the subtlety of that which now arises and falls away, unknown, to be familiar with that which is not self, little by little. Is that not the path? Because for noble truths, this is the fourth one. Each noble truth is so subtle, so the path leading to understand, not just thinking, but experiencing the nature of that, which is and falls away. Nimitta, see, each word should be studied so that right understanding develops to understand who is the Buddha and what he enlightened. So understanding the word about the truth comes from the enlightenment of the enlightened one. And how subtle it is from no attention to the seeing right now at all, but begin to understand who is the Buddha. He enlightened the truth of whatever is there. And what is there now is that what he taught, no one and no thing, even seeing right now, no one and nothing. So doing something, see, who do? Is anyone doing? Or is it moment of the function of different realities, citta and cetasika, arise together and force away one by one, so very rapidly. But that enlightenment means the understanding of the truth. So very, very true, each word now. That's why it's not just one's own idea or one's or the other's idea that we thought and think that it's so true. But what about the subtlety of that which Buddha had to develop quite a long, long time, eons and eons, to enlighten the truth? And after his enlightenment, he said, that was so subtle, this enlightenment. So it's just like a reminder not to forget about his great wisdom, purity, and compassion for the other. That is so very subtle. Without his words, it's important. It's without his word, no one can understand the truth of what is there right now. It cannot be taken for I, because it's conditioned to arise to see by many conditions and then gone following instantly. So where is the I? That's why he taught about the Abhidhamma, Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and Nibbana. Who knows? The subtlety of even hardness right now. What to teach about it? Not just don't mind it, just try to do something. That is not understanding what is there, which has been taken for something in one's life, not just this life, eons and eons ago. That's why the idea of self is very deeply rooted. After seeing has fallen away, what he taught about Abhidhamma for asava and tittasava is there, ignorance, avijjasava is there, and pavasava, clinging to being is there, and clinging to sensuous object is there. Is it not true? Unknown, until there can be the understanding, little by little, to condition moment of direct understanding of that which is now appearing. Unexpectedly, so there can be the understanding of each moment is an expected moment by conditions, but it's covered up. So no one even hearing about the moment of unexpected moment right now. Impossible to understand that, but from or by hearing again, considering again, understanding again, letting go little by little, and right understanding can understand exactly how much understanding of this moment is. And if there's no understanding of this moment at all, how can it develop to understand better and clearer after this moment, unknown by conditions? So the path is so subtle because it's the fourth noble truth. So subtle that without understanding, sammatiti, it cannot be right path at all. So for someone, no understanding at all, just go to the meditation center and do. What is that? Wrong understanding. That right understanding has to be at any moment when there is a reality to be known little by little until it can be directly understood with direct awareness as what Buddha taught, which has been developed enough to understand the nature of that, which is now arise, which is now appearing, but not in the beginning, to directly experience the arising and falling away of what is there by conditions, unexpected. That's why the nature, the understanding of anatta develop on and on and on until it can let go what is taken for thing and people or I at all. Is this not subtle? Is it easy? Just know nothing and just walk and sit and try to do and try to what to experience it correctly? Impossible, because the understanding of the truth has to be stage by stage. The level of intellectual understanding is now, at this moment. What is not right cannot condition the moment of directly experience the truth unexpectedly of the unexpected object at unexpected time. This is anatta. Is this not true? At this moment, what Buddha teach about seeing, hearing, thinking, is there viriya with seeing or no viriya with seeing, and why not? To let go the idea of self, not understanding anything, just doing something, thinking that it can lead to the understanding. Understanding of what? If it's not the understanding of seeing right now, is it right understanding or no understanding and ignorance because of not understanding the truth of what is there in life? That's why each word should be considered carefully, more confidence about the truth of any moment, as this moment is so subtle. What is there? What are the unknown all the time? At moment of seeing, who knows how many cetasika condition seeing to arise, and seeing also condition cetasika to arise too. For example, without seeing, can there be attachment to the object? So seeing condition attachment too. And attachment condition different kinds of citta, because some citta arises with attachment and some do not have attachment arising with them at all. And if this is not known, how can there be letting go, little by little, of that which is now appearing, not me? Otherwise, what is the way to let go? Taking seeing for I see. So the first thing to study the truth is to understand the truth of it by the enlightened one, not by this person or that person at all. It's said that each word of truth is the word of the Buddha. Because how can anyone have such understanding so true as that which is said from the Buddha, from his word about it, enlightenment, the truth? That can be enlightened, but not by any way or the idea of self, trying so hard to let go of self. It's impossible because it's motivated by the very firm, strong, clinging to I. Any time in life when there is no understanding, depending on the level of conditions at each different moment. So what about asava? After seeing right now, how can it be letting go? Impossible when there's no understanding. So wrong understanding, think wrongly that I can do. But what is I? What is Dhamma? And what is Abhidhamma? And what is the teachings of the Buddha? All Dhammas are subtle. But if one, no idea, no understanding, just go to somewhere and try to concentrate of just one object at will, there is cetana at that very moment, arising with wrong understanding. So it motivates the action, try to do, and thinking that is the way to understand the truth. But that is not the way Buddha taught from his development eons and eons ago, to realize the truth directly, experience what is there as it is. That's why even listening to Abhidhamma is not just I know, I understand, I think, but what is it? Is it there now? And can it be known from considering the truth of what is there right now? There is Phassa Cetasika, Vedana Cetasika. Can there be the understanding directly of that if it is not the moment of experiencing that? So it's not thinking, but it's the understanding of what is there, little by little, until that which is covered up appear like in darkness. There can be light to know the difference between light and dark. So ignorance is there. It's there until right understanding is there. Understand what is ignorance and what is right understanding. It's this very moment too, because without this very moment, from moment to moment, can there be life? And who can stop it? And what is meant by Nibbana? And what is the point of the great compassion of the Buddha? He taught the path leading to understanding the subtlety of what is there now. And what is this? Condition for understanding. Manasikara in Pali term. No one there at all. But it's a kind of cetasika, which is that which attend to what is there as the object. So seeing cannot attend to that very object. It just experiences clearly the characteristic of that which appears. So it's different from other cetasikas. Citta cannot be cetasika, and cetasika cannot be citta. And if there's no understanding of the subtlety of the words of the Buddha, how can there be the development of understanding directly of that which is there now? And so what is meant by direct understanding? See, no thought, no idea, just try to do. What about Abhidhamma's teaching about that very moment? What is there, which isn't self or anything? Each reality has its own characteristic and its own function. This is the beginning to develop the idea of no one. It's that particular reality which performs its function. That's all. So without the understanding about the word of the Buddha, just one word at a time, it cannot lead to any understanding of that which is now appearing. And the teaching of the Buddha condition more understanding, more letting go, the clinging to the idea of self. If you ask anyone, a child or an old one, what is there now? Can they answer? If they don't have any understanding of the teachings of the Buddha at all. So there can be discussion on the truth of the word that Buddha taught, to have more understanding that actually what is meant by anatta or Dhamma or Abhidhamma or Dhammas are anatta. What does it mean? Or, so is it wrong to think that I can do? What is there at that moment? What did Buddha say about the moment of I can do? There must be a reality which experiences that object, citta. No one there. And cetasikas. See, no one. This will lead to more confidence of the truth, that has been wrongly accumulated to have the idea of I, because the tree cannot have any idea of anything at all, because the tree cannot experience anything. Hardness is hardness. But when there is a reality which arises in experience, and no one there at all, so it's me. That moment of experiencing is me. But in fact, is it you or anyone? It's only a reality that no one can stop it at all. By conditions, it's there. We learn about different conditions in Abhidhamma to have more understanding, clear and clear, that because of this, that it arises paticca. So is there paticca samuppada? Is seeing paticca samuppada too? To learn about paticca samuppada is understanding what is there now, not just the word, what condition what and what condition what. This very moment, the one who has listened to paticca samuppada is seeing paticca samuppada. Is it understood as paticca samuppada, no one there at all? Or I'm listening to paticca samuppada. So what is seeing, if one thinks like that? What condition? What is avijja, condition sankhara, and so on? We can talk about any word, anything, because it's there now, which is not known yet, until hearing about the truth and begin to have intellectual understanding of that, because it's not directly understood as just as it is. Seeing, thinking, the idea, all adhamas, which can experience an object and experience in different ways by accumulation from life to life. Who knows that even thinking right now is conditioned? And right understanding is right understanding. It understands the reality intellectually, that it can be directly experienced. Otherwise, there's no Buddha and there's no his followers, the Sangha. And how come to be the Sangha? From hearing the words from the enlightened one. And right understanding develops at moment of understanding. It's not the moment of ignorance, which usually is accumulated unknowingly. Not understanding seeing, not understanding hearing, understand whatever is there. Not understanding, what is it? Ignorance. So how much ignorance developed or accumulated from life to life, eons and eons in this life and the next life, on and on and on. More and more akusala, more and more difficult to understand it and eradicate it. That's why there should be right from the very beginning, right understanding, not misunderstanding or wrong understanding, that is I now, because the teaching of the Buddha will lead to more understanding of no me, no I, and no thing. Otherwise, how can it let go? Attachment to what is there, which is now appearing. So who knows that there is attachment to that which is there now and any moment. At moment of waking up, open one's eye, experience or see something. Is there no attachment? Or is there so very quickly by conditions, by the accumulation, of that which is ready to arise at moment of experiencing anything. By understanding this, there can be the understanding of who's the enlightenment. As everyone said, the one who sees me, the one who sees Dhamma sees me. That's the word of the Buddha. So when there's no understanding of what is there now, does anyone know who's the enlightenment? And what is meant by enlightenment? Not understanding what is there now, trying to do something? Is that the understanding of the great wisdom of the enlightenment and all parami to support and condition the right path, which is so very subtle, and it has to be right understanding as the lead or the head, the chief of parami. Without right understanding, just sit. Where's the parami? And what is parami? That's why all paramis comes from right understanding. Otherwise, it's not parami, which can lead to enlightenment, the truth. That which does not lead to understand the truth cannot be parami. And without parami, can there be moment of completely, absolutely letting go the idea of self, never arise again, never to arise again in samsara from then on. So what you see now, people and things, is it true? Or what is the truth of seeing? What is the teaching about Abhidhamma, about seeing, sees what? And if it's not directly experienced as the truth, as that, how can there be letting go things around and people around? Because of the succession of that which is experienced unknown. So it forms up the idea of something by shape and form of all kinds of that which is experienced through any of the Dawei. The sound is different. See, how come? It just sound by conditions. Different tastes, how come? By conditions. Different kind of thinking, how come? By different conditions. All unconditioned reality. And that can be understood anytime after hearing, considering, more confidence of the truth, Satya Parami. Without being sincere and truthful to the truth, it's impossible to have right understanding of what is there as it is. As no thing, is that what it is? So can just sitting, doing something, condition right understanding of what is there now? Impossible. So it's not the teaching of the Buddha at all. Because of no understanding at all. It's just remembering the word, but not understanding that it's not just the word, but it's about that which is now appearing. That word represents what is there now. Is there citta? Is there cetasika? Is there rupa? Is anyone is known or thought about or being paid attention? And is this not the teaching of the Buddha? The subtlety of what is there, which cannot be taken for anything. Why not? It just arises and falls away in split second, no more. So what about that which has gone to be someone or me? Before seeing, there's no seeing, no me. But at moment of seeing, it's me, it's I who see. Is that not right? Is it wrong understanding? Is that clinging? Is that ignorance? At this very moment of not understanding what is there is so true as it is. That's why listening to the teaching is letting go ignorance, little by little, from stage to stage, at moment of hearing, without careful considering wisely. It's impossible to understand what he meant by Dhamma. It means no one and no thing. It's so true. It's that it arises by conditions and so on. This is what he taught for 45 years. How long? What for? Because so much ignorance accumulated to condition wrong understanding, clinging until each word has been carefully considered about, little by little, to understand the truth, the absolute truth of what he meant from his enlightenment, to have the other person to have right understanding about the truth. And this is his great wisdom and purity and compassion. So to pay respect to the Buddha is after hearing and understanding who's he, so kind that there can be understanding of that which is now appearing from hearing, considering. So it to directly understanding, and then after that, directly experience the truth. That is the meaning of the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha is all Dhamma, all conditioned Dhammas. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, it just arises by conditions and gone. No one there. Oh, ignorance is there. Taking it for something, on and on. Have wrong understanding, wrong practice. Otherwise, Buddha didn't say about wrong practice of miccha-titi and miccha-makka. So what is samma-makka and what is miccha-makka? If it's not known, one takes the miccha-makka all the way because not understanding what is the right makka or samma-makka. If there is no miccha-makka at all, Buddha didn't say anything about it because it's there. So he pointed out without right understanding of Dhamma as no one can do anything at all, because in truth there is no one. There is wrong understanding and right understanding. Each one performs its function. When it's wrong, it clings to that wrong idea, wrong understanding. Not letting go, wrong understanding. But right understanding understands what is right and what is wrong. So whenever there is wrong understanding, sila pramasa, right understanding understands instantly. So it can let go any kind of sila pramasa, wrong practices. Is there anything anyone would like to talk about? or any disagreement.
I have a question, Achan, and it's about the asaras. Ditthi, avijja, and lopa are all asaras, but why not dosa? Why is dosa not an asara?
Yeah. Would you like to have dosa? Do you feel dosa?
No, I wouldn't like to have dosa, Achan.
So what is the nature of that which appears? No matter what, there must be the idea of what is it and what is there at that very moment. What is that? So I think about it, right? I think about what is said. Because ignorance is there. So what is that condition, attachment to that as I or something? So after that, it conditioned dosa, but not at moment avijja arises so soon, instantly after seeing. That's why there can be the understanding of different degrees of akusla. When it is new, when it is kilesa, dosa is there. See? But at moment of this very moment, is there any ignorance? And when it's there, not understanding that it's conditioned to arise, be clinging the idea of self to whatever appears is there by ignorance as conditions. You don't know yet what is there. See, how can there be dosa? Because when we talk about process of experiencing an object, it depends on accumulation after that moment, whether it is what degree. When it is dosa, it's not the asava at all. Asava is that which is there clinging to that as something unknown, that it's I, not I, but it's taken for I. When one's wakes up, one wakes up. Is that right? Or the other? See, it's unknown attachment, so very subtle. But who knows? The Buddha taught about why anyone just think of I all the time, not saying out, but it's me. Who wakes up? It's me. No one there at all. But when one thinks about when the dosa appears, it's not asava. See, because the accumulation of dosa. That's why there are many levels of akusala in a day. When lopa is not known at all, just wake up, watching, eating, dressing, and so on. What are they? And when the object is unpleasant, dosa arises and it's known as dosa. But what about asava? See? Can it be known?
No, Achan, not the asaras. You've pointed it out quite clearly. Yes, we don't know when there's lopa or moha, but certainly with dosa, it's more obvious, could I say?
That's right. There are different degrees of akusala. When it is kilesa, nivarana, and sanjosna, it's not asava. But when it's not those, it is asava. Otherwise, what is there? But when panya is there, it's not dosa, it's not asava, it's not nivarana. That's why arahata knows they do not have any kind of kilesa anymore, even asava. But for everyone now, there is asava unknown from moment to moment, because it's not as strong as kilesa or nivarana or sanjosna. That's why Buddha classify kilesa as different degrees. Anusaya does not arise at all. Asava arises unknown after seeing and hearing. And the other can be known when it's there.
That's made it a lot clearer. Thank you, Achan. Very good. If there's no one else has any more, another question I have, and I've taken it from somewhere I've read. Before having any kind of micchaditi, there must first be the view. I see, I hear, I think, taking the 5 khandhas for I. So I'm thinking micchaditi, belief in God or whatever the micchaditi is, but there must first be that belief in me. Is that correct?
You see that it's only guessing, thinking about reality. It's not moment of understanding it. So begin to understand the truth. Is there asava? Kamasava, for those who are not anagami. Avijjasava, ditthasava, bhavasava. See, who knows? If Buddha didn't teach about it at all, who knows about asava and anusaya and kilesa and sanjosna and nivarana? See? Does anyone try to know it? And what motivates that moment?
Of trying. I guess the moment of trying is I want something.
Ignorance and clinging, for sure.
Okay.
Who knows at that very moment is there as asava? That's why only right understanding, which can eradicate ignorance and ditthi and vicikicca, can completely, absolutely eradicate asava too, because it eradicates anusaya. So no condition for asava or any level of akusala can arise anymore. That's the meaning of the eradication of akusala. And what can do? Right understanding at the degree that it has developed the letting go of self little by little until right understanding understand that it's ended at moment of enlightenment. That which doesn't have any condition to arise at all. Otherwise, the kilesa cannot be eradicated. It cannot end up. So who's the Buddha? The enlightened one. And what is meant by enlightened? No more akusala at different degrees, different levels, stage by stage, from Sotapanna up to Arahata.
And Lena, this is relevant to the points you were raising before. The asavas are the very subtle taints that arise even in the sense door processes. So after the seeing of visible object, if it's a pleasant object, the clinging arises instantly to that feeling long before there's any thought in the mind or about being mindful or being aware. Just when the pleasant object is experienced, the very subtle clinging is there immediately. No one can stop it because there is no one that can do anything. So in truth, there are only different chaitas, chaitasikas, and rupas. No one there at all. So even when we talk about not getting burnt by touching the stove, for example, we're just talking conventionally, but when we talk in reality about realities, there are just moments of seeing, and these are followed by kusala or akusala cittas, instantly by conditions, falling away immediately. No one there to see, no one there to have attachment, no one there to stop attachment, just different realities but arising by conditions. And even when we read about being aware of the body, for example, awareness is a reality that is conditioned. Sampajanya, understanding, is a reality that is conditioned. And what the awareness can be aware of, what the understanding can understand, are realities. So we read about the body, but actually what is meant, what is being referred to, are the rupas, the different moments of the different hardness, the different heat, cold, the different rupas which are taken for the body. Because in truth, just as there is no self, there is also no body. So no one can be aware of a body because it's a figment of the imagination. What is touched now is hardness, not a leg, not an arm, not a body. And only through the development of understanding can awareness develop as well. If there's no understanding, then it seems I can be aware of the body or I can stop the feeling. But when there is understanding of the different realities, this is the way understanding and awareness can develop naturally. So we read that there is suffering, but no one who suffers. There is understanding, but no one who understands. There is the traveling on the path, but no one who travels on the path. So for the development of understanding and awareness, we have to hear and consider about what the different realities are that can be understood. Otherwise, we can read an entire sutta with the idea of I can be aware of body or I can be aware of breath, but not understanding what the realities are. That's why we come back to talking about this moment. What is it that seeing sees now? Does seeing see a body, or does seeing see a computer screen? What does seeing see now? Because if there's no understanding of what seeing is, how can there be awareness of it? If there's no understanding of what is seen in truth, not conventionally thought about, there can be no understanding of what the visible object is. So this is why the Buddha taught about all kinds of realities and all kinds of realities as anatta, because without understanding the truth about what the reality is right now, that appears now, there cannot be the development of understanding and awareness of that reality. So whatever we read about, no matter it's Vedana or body or anything, we have to understand what the absolute reality is, what the Paramatta Dhamma is at this moment. I think you were going to make a few comments earlier, but your microphone wasn't turned on. Is there anything you would like to add or ask about?
There's plenty, but I think I would like to give opportunity to others as well, because I'm occupying all the time and I'm not letting everyone else ask the questions. So I'm trying to grasp and digest what Achan said and what you said. I wouldn't say it's crystal clear still. I'm still quite confused, but I don't want to take up the entire time. Please, everybody else needs to be asking questions as well. So really grateful for all the explanation and time.
And I
Dina,
would
we appreciate, sorry, we appreciate your questions. They help us as well. So thank you for asking. And you can have as much time as you like.
I'm kind of a bit naive. I think my questions are very naive. It's not making sense because all of you really understand Abhidhamma very well. And what I'm saying is just, it's very amateurish. So I just feel I'm wasting all of your time, because all of you have a good understanding of this Paramatha Dhamma, but I'm like, I'm still kind of grappling to come to terms with it and understand it.
Well, it's obvious that you've studied the teachings at some length. You're very familiar with a lot of the terminology, even if you don't think you've particularly studied Abhidhamma. The point is that what is in the suttas and what is in the Abhidhamma are one and the same thing, but just expressed in a different manner of presentation. So there's no, if one has studied, for example, mostly from the suttas, or another has studied mostly from the Abhidhamma, there shouldn't be any difference in the understanding, the meaning of what is there, because there's so, for a start, there's so much in common between the two. There's many suttas about the khandhas, for example, and about the ayatanas and about the dhatus, and the presentation of the same realities in the Abhidhamma is no different. So we don't like to make a big distinction between coming from this aspect or that aspect. So when we talk about sati sampajanya, which has come up quite a bit, we're referring to awareness and understanding, right? The mental factor of sati and the mental factor of panya. We understand that, whether we want to give it by the Abhidhamma name or the sutta name shouldn't make any difference. And the point that I just wanted to mention briefly was that these are realities, that they are dhammas that are anicca, dukkha, and anatta, as explained in all the suttas. And it depends what one understands by the terms anicca, dukkha, and anatta, of course. But as you mentioned, I think the other day, that anatta actually means beyond control. And we can summarize that by just saying that these dhammas are all conditioned, right? They only arise by conditions, and they arise briefly and fall away when those conditions are no longer present. So we're talking about, or the Buddha's path is about understanding the true nature of conditions and the realities that are conditioned. And we can say that the idea that this understanding can be conduced to arise, or other kinds of kusala can be conduced to arise by following a practice, goes against the conditioned nature of realities that one is trying to understand. And understanding itself is understanding. So I mentioned earlier the 4 factors, but of course, in addition to that, and what is not specifically mentioned there, is the understanding that has been developed previously in previous lifetimes. Because if there wasn't that development of understanding, then there wouldn't be interest in the Dhamma in this lifetime. And so it's a matter of the conditions for previously developed and accumulated understanding to arise. And just like there are conditions for the unwholesome tendencies to arise, or tasting the pleasant object means attachment, so there are conditions for the previously accumulated understanding to arise. And that is the connection. When you say, if one didn't do anything, there wouldn't be any development. Not true, because there is all that accumulated understanding from the past, great or little, but as it is, that is ready to arise when those conditions are met. And that is the 4 factors that are spoken of earlier. So it's not as hopeless as it may seem at first blush. But the fact is, it does take a long time, and there shouldn't be expectations. The minute, of course, that there are expectations of having more awareness and understanding, or reaching a certain level of understanding in the present lifetime, then that is going to condition the kind of practice that is, Ajahn mentioned in her talk just a minute ago, Silabhata Paramasa. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that particular Pali term. And that is attachment, sometimes translated as attachment to rites and rituals, but practice is a ritual. Going to a certain place, sitting in a certain position, putting one's attention on this or that is all part of a plan, a ritual, or steps. And if it was a matter of just following steps, the Buddha would have said, well, here is step 1, step 2, step 3. He didn't, because there aren't any. And it's all about understanding the way things are actually according to his description of the world at the present moment, the seeing and the hearing. And these are the realities that are to be, he said, are to be understood, that if there is to be the development of the path.
Thank you so much for that, John. Really appreciate it. Can I again ask a very naive question then? So you said all this, there's nothing to be done. Nobody actually has to do something and go somewhere. And, this is also about a Silabhata Paramasa, that you're actually sitting, it's a ritual. That makes sense to me. But I've been reading suttas for a long time, so but I've had a different way of understanding it. So let's say in Anapanasati Sutta, which has been, I think everybody has been rereading it many times because it's a central teaching of Buddha. When he says one goes to the forest and one goes to the place which is scheduled, which is isolated, and you restrain your senses, and so you're actually going to the forest, you're going to a place which is isolated, and you are mindful of the breathing.
You or he?
He says one goes to the forest, one goes to the forest, and one contemplates the breathing, one does this. So so those 16 steps have to be followed. That's where the idea of steps was coming from. So one actually, so I was till now I was actually doing that, going to a place, like going to a retreat, place in isolation, sitting down, observing my breath. So where does all of that fit in? That is also part of doing again.
Okay, well, I just addressed that by referring to the Satipatthana Sutta because I'm more familiar with that than with the Anapanasati Sutta. But in the first part of the Gayanupassana section, it talks about the case of the monk who has gone to the forest and sat down cross-legged, brought mindfulness to the fore, breathed in mindfully and breathed out mindfully. Now, that is setting the scene for, or the setting, describing the particular circumstances that what follows in that little section is about to address. So that is not to be read as meaning you should go to the forest and sit down cross-legged and you should put mindfulness, because that can't be done. That can only be done by the person who is already living that particular lifestyle and has developed that understanding and awareness to that level. So it's the case of the person who has gone in the past tense to the forest and sat down with his legs crossed and mindfulness to the fore. And only after that, it describes how that person can further develop his understanding to greater levels. So it's the similar case for the Anapanasati Sutta. It has to be carefully studied and not just read, as Sukin said. If you come at it from the mindset that the Buddha is telling us what to do, then of course when you read the Anapanasati Sutta, that's what you'll take out of it. But if one puts it in the context of the rest of the teachings and the conditioned nature of realities, one will see that it's not an instruction at all. It's a description of how certain development is possible for the person who has developed mindfulness of breathing, which can refer to samatha, not vipassana or vipassana. So the person who has developed samatha with breath as object can also become enlightened with that object as basis. So it's a particular instruction for that kind of person. It's not a general statement that the person who wants to develop understanding and insight should practice mindfulness of breathing. And so it's a whole different way of approaching and understanding the Buddha's words, more consistent with the rest of the teachings, because not everyone in the Buddha's time practiced mindfulness of breathing and attained jhana. People became enlightened with no particular apparent skills in other kinds of kusala, but they had developed understanding in previous lifetimes. Angulimala, for example, I'm sure you've read about him. How is it possible for a person who was living his life to become enlightened shortly after meeting the Buddha? There must be an answer.
So when you mentioned earlier, is there any role of meditation? The question is, what is meditation? And can there be meditation right now? Because now, as lay people, we're not living in the forest. We're living with family and friends in the city or amongst people going to the market and so on. And the Buddha taught that one can live alone in the busy marketplace or anywhere at all, because seeing, which Ajahn was talking about, is seeing no matter in the forest or in the marketplace. Hearing is hearing now or there or anytime. So the Buddha taught us to learn to live alone with the reality appearing right now, no matter where and when. If one goes to the forest and is overwhelmed by dosa or overwhelmed by lobha, there's no living alone at that time. So the meditation, or we could use the word bhavana, has to be at this moment. It has to be the understanding right now, because life just exists in a moment. So now, if visible object is seen now, there can be a little understanding of what visible object is. Not a person, not a thing, not a tree, not a forest, but just that which is seen. The sound that is heard now is just that which is heard, not birds, not people, not cars. It's just the reality of sound. So there can be the beginning of bhavana, the beginning of understanding right now. If we wait for another time, another place for meditation, with the idea that I should do something, it means there's no understanding at all at this moment of the thinking and the clinging to self. So the bhavana has to begin now, and it can only begin by understanding a little more about what it is that is heard now, what it is that is seen now, what Vedana really is, not what we think of it. Like now at a moment of seeing, there is Vedana, but who knows anything about the neutral feeling? And if one tries to catch it or tries to be aware, then it is lobha. But there can be understanding of lobha. It's also a conditioned reality. So it's not I trying to do anything, but beginning to understand, beginning to develop a little more bhavana right now. And this is how we understand the meaning of bhavana or meditation, if you like. It has to be now, not I doing anything, but the gradual development of understanding of what appears right now, no matter confusion or thinking or seeing or what is seen. So whatever the Buddha taught about comes back to this moment, to life as it is at this moment. And that's why he taught about, well, while getting dressed or eating food or going to the bathroom, just daily life, no matter what the circumstances are, not trying to copy those who are in the forest already or trying to copy those who have monks' robes on, but understanding about realities right now in daily life.
Thanks for that, Sarah. No, what I meant was that meditation on cushion and off cushion. So off cushion, as you've said, everyday practice, developing bhavana in that particular moment, living in the moment and recognizing what's happening right now. And as John mentioned, that there are two ways of going through it. So people like Angulimal who had no practice at all. So that was, they had the insight into it. They were not doing any samatha practice. So they were not, sitting in meditation for long hours, and they had not developed any samadhis. But it happened and they developed an insight, right? So, but from what I understood is, it's not that we're trying to emulate them and going to the forest and doing that, but still sitting in the posture. It's not that I who's sitting in the posture, it's just awareness. Awareness is just knowing and the object. So awareness of the breath, and awareness of the breath. So once there is awareness of the breath and awareness of the breath, and you're just sitting in the posture, the idea was to concentrate or still the mind in such a way. So you're not doing anything by yourself. It's just that because you're being aware by focusing on the breath, the awareness is focused on the breath, awareness of that particular object at that particular time. The mind kind of settles down so much that day-to-day understanding, that of the cushion meditation, that the understanding deepens. The mind is still enough to penetrate the day-to-day, the momentary wisdom, so rather than taking it as me, I'm seeing Sarah, I'm hearing Sarah, because the mind is so settled and still from the cushion practice that I'm actually able to understand these are just the dhammas, originating, the I consciousness is arising, the object is arising, and that's why, and the conditions are ripe. So
Lena, can I just ask, during the practice, as you call it, are there both kusala and akusala moments? And is there the understanding, the knowing of the difference between the moments that are kusala and those that are akusala?
Sometimes, yes.
Well, because unless that difference is known, then it's not possible to know whether what is being developed is kusala or akusala.
Mm-hmm.
So is the difference between subtle attachment and kusala jitta with subtle attachment, and jitta that is kusala known?
I don't know how to...
Yeah, at the moment of sitting down, for example, to practice, is that kusala or akusala?
Well, there was some subtle attachment to begin with 20 years back when I started, but now the sitting down is, in my mind, it's kusala, but it may not be.
And you know that how? Just because you know the difference between the two, or you're just surmising that it must be kusala because it's different from how it was 20 years ago?
I'm kind of surmising it because there's no attachment to the results. There's no attachment to that when I'll meditate, this will happen.
Can there be subtle attachment that is not apparent?
If something is not grossly apparent, well, then there can be. There used to be a lot of attachment. So sometimes a subtle attachment comes up and I can see it. There is a subtle attachment. But sometimes I think I totally let go. I'm just aware of...
So if it's not kusala at the time of sitting down, we'll say,
Mhm.
then when does it become kusala in the practice?
When you totally let go, when you're not you're just aware of the present moment the way it is. You're aware of the breath in practice.
What is the object at the moment of being aware of everything as it is?
So I was told that that could be just focused. You can do the breath or choiceless awareness, whatever is arising by any sense door, whatever is arising, you're aware of it the way it is.
But if awareness is a conditioned reality, a wholesome mental factor, how can you say just be aware of whatever is? Because if you were to say to any person, be aware of what is being heard or seen, it wouldn't be kusala, would it? Because the norm is subtle akusala in a day. There's attachment now to what is being seen and heard. If it was kusala, there wouldn't be any need to practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if one was to say to any other person, individual, you should be aware of what is being seen and heard, then whatever they were doing, it wouldn't be awareness of, it wouldn't be the wholesome mental factor of awareness that takes a conditioned reality as its object. Because the idea of what is being seen and heard that people have is not the reality of visible object and sound, which is experienced by eye consciousness and ear consciousness. It's just a conventional idea of awareness. So there's no basis for any kusala in that case, in a practice. Because whatever different experiences have, the experiences that a person has in a sitting practice are different from the norm, but that doesn't make them kusala. That doesn't make it the awareness the Buddha spoke of, the conditioned reality, wholesome mental factor. Awareness, sati sampajanya is awareness and understanding. And those, it's the awareness that arises with the understanding that's important. But these are conditioned realities. So if a person has the idea that by sitting quietly and paying attention, that will be kusala, that wouldn't be, that's not consistent with the teaching of these realities as conditioned, arising by their own conditions, not by the exercise of will or effort on the part of the individual.
That makes sense, John. So understanding all of this, what is that? So in effect, if I take all of that, what should I be doing? Like once I finish off with this conversation, what should I be doing? Or is there anything I can do, this body can do, anything which has to be done from my side to progress further on the path? What should I be doing? Just listening to Dhamma?
What is one's idea of progress on the path? It's understanding the Buddha's teaching more deeply and more truly, so that gradually over time, conditioned realities come to be known more as they are. So we can forget about any idea of having more kusala or lesser kusala in daily life, because that's not what we're talking about. That is the general idea of what progress is in the spiritual life, but it's not the Buddha's teaching.
Right.
So the important thing is to understand what can be the object of awareness and understanding. And Sarah and Ajahn have both mentioned seeing and visible object, hearing and sound. So it's not a matter of paying attention to the mental states, for example, which is a common notion that abounds. And we talked the other day of reflecting on what has been heard. So perhaps you've heard things explained a little differently today and on Saturday than you were used to. But it will take time for this to be assimilated and made sense of. So there's no need to do anything immediately or even later. But by virtue of your interest in the Dhamma, you will consider, you will reflect on those things, even unconsciously, if we say subconsciously, although, of course, it's still consciousness that is doing the reflecting. And that can be kusala, actually, although it's not recognized as such, because we think of kusala in terms of some kind of special mind state.
And as Ajahn said, the realities, the Abhidhamma, no matter whether we read in the suttas or Vinaya or the Abhidhamma itself, the actual realities are so subtle and the development of understanding is so deep. This is why the Buddha hesitated before teaching. So there has to be so much listening, so much careful considering, so much reflecting, not just thinking as one's always thinking, it's always thought before thinking that one knows. So one has to hear and read and consider about different realities from different aspects by way of khandhas, ayatanas, and so on, to really begin to understand that each one is anatta and that really there is no one that can do anything. So each moment, each reality is conditioned. So I just encourage you very sincerely to join us as often as you can. Keep writing and asking questions on DSG and considering carefully in order to understand that there are just different dhammas. And we appreciate your sincere interest. Because we've only got a few minutes, I just see if Ajahn would like to finish with some words or encouragement to you.
I think that each word of the truth has to be considered very carefully and truthfully. For example, is there any way to understand the truth? See, we have to understand before all that what is the truth to be understood. Otherwise, it's only the word to understand the truth. But what is it, the truth? Is it there now? And when there is the truth right now, shouldn't be known or understand it as no thing at all. Citta is citta. It cannot be anyone. It cannot belong to anyone because it rises and falls away instantly. Is that what should be realized, to let go the idea of self? And can anyone develop right understanding at will? Impossible. Otherwise, there can be the moment of enlightenment at will right now. But it's impossible. And this is the moment to let go the idea of self. When it's impossible, why? Because there's no one who can do anything at all. Because at moment of taking something for I as one, what is that in truth? It's so subtle because it's covered up all the time. Not hearing about reality is a reality. Seeing cannot be anything else and it cannot belong to anyone. Why? Sunyata, completely gone, never to return. When the truth is like this, it is the absolute truth at any time. That's why right understanding begin to let go the idea of self, because Buddha said, what is that which is taken for self? If nothing is there, no experiencing anything, how can it be the idea of self? Impossible. But sense is there by conditions, but not understanding that very moment as what is it that cannot be taken for self, like seeing, hearing, it's now. So can anyone at will experience the truth? try to do so many different things, impossible. So understanding is a reality. It's not ignorance, it's not attachment. It is that which understand the truth of that as much as it's conditioned. When there's no condition to experience directly the truth of that which is now arising and falling away, what is the way? To understand more about this very moment, as Buddha taught for 45 years about everything, to develop the understanding that it cannot be taken for self at all, and understand the great wisdom of the Buddha that he taught about reality that is so very, very subtle. That's why each word should be studied carefully to have to be firm confidence of that which appears as no one. Is that the point of listening to the teaching? No one, anatta. What's meant by anatta? All dhammas. So what is dhamma?
To hold down this.
Dhamma, it is anatta. That's what understand each word better and better, clearer and clearer, that the truth is that which Buddha had enlightened and taught. Now, is everything anatta? See, this is the beginning to have more confidence of the meaning of dhammas. All dhammas are dhamma, anatta. I think it's time now. Swadika.
Sadhika, thank you, Ajahn.
สวัสดีครับ
Swadika.
ท่านอาจารย์
ครับอาจารย์ครับ
Thank you very much อาจารย์
สวัสดีครับ
Thank you,
ขอบคุณ
everyone.
อาจารย์ค่ะ
ขอบคุณครับ
อนุโมทนากับคุณเซราคุณจอน and everyone